New York.
Welcome back to the basement where it's top level content, lower level. Drew over here readying his voice up. So we had a little live Saturday night. I don't know how many people joined it on YouTube. You can actually go back and watch it. We ate some gummy bears. The world's hottest gummy bears, as they would call. And honestly, when you're chewing the gummy bears, they had a really good taste until you stopped chewing. And then they were like, yep, I'm hot.
Yeah, you know what? It tasted like those Haribo cherry gummies.
It really did. It had a strong cherry flavor.
Yeah, I will tell them, if they were to make some that weren't so hot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, flavor was there.
Yeah.
But it was covered in, it looked like somebody pepper sprayed the dudes.
Yeah.
Then we also ate some, what was the name? Bean Boozled jelly beans. They were sriracha.
Jalapeno.
Habanero.
Cayenne.
Yeah.
And Ghost. Or
No,
not Ghost.
Carolina Reaper.
Yeah, Reaper.
And honestly, they taste like doo-doo.
Yeah.
They were horrible. I think I gagged more because they just tasted so bad.
Yeah, they had a horrible flavor to it.
Yeah.
Beef jerky was delicious, though.
Yeah, the beef jerky wasn't bad, but man, it was on a man level. It burnt my tongue, burnt the brakes off my tongue.
I think what got me with the beef jerky was it got underneath my tongue. I think that's what got it for me. I think if it wouldn't have got so much underneath my tongue.
You caused it to go up my nose because I was
I thought you were going to start crying. And then you had me laugh, which caused my nose to explode. Felt like being through the gas chamber all over again. Oh, boy.
If you missed the live, you definitely missed out, but definitely go back and watch it. We're going to try to go live more often.
And for everybody listening on the audio side of the podcast, we're going to try to extract the audio. I don't know if it's going to be funny or not audio-wise, but we're going to try to extract it, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like you're definitely going to get some good content out of it.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about a couple things on there. Shout out to everybody that jumped in on that live. We also recorded an impromptu episode with Ethan from Hunting with Appalachia. He joined in on the live and said, hey, man, you want to talk about ghost stories and Bigfoot? I said, absolutely.
We will never turn down an opportunity to talk about ghosts and Bigfoot.
Oh, absolutely. So he jumped in on Zoom. We about a 40-minute episode of just talking about outdoor stuff, Appalachian folklore. Kind of fit the theme for the week. It was great.
Yeah, and that being said, too, again, we've mentioned it before. If you ever got something you want to talk about with us, hit us up. Hit us up on our personal channels, like on our personal pages, the actual, podcast page. Yeah. We're always down to talk to people about different things, especially if it's an interesting topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the easiest way to find us right now is through our Facebook. We are booming on Facebook right now. Well, in our perspective, we're booming. 570 some followers at this point right now. So that's really good for us. So if you want to, anything you want us to talk about, message us, drop us a comment, let us know. We'll talk about it. We'll research it. We'll talk about it. May not be the best research, but it is what it is.
Hey, don't fact check us.
Yeah, don't fact check us. Anybody wants to make T-shirts for the basement? Our catchphrase is, don't fact check us. Don't fact check us, please.
Hey, it's a good thing that, they started doing away with that fact-checking stuff.
Yeah.
Everything that we post.
Yeah. Don't fact check us. So with that being said, we're going to jump right on into to another part of our mini-series of Appalachian and West Virginia folklore. And one thing we're going to talk about is something that I found very interesting, is the Moundsville, West Virginia, and it's in Moundsville, West Virginia, the West Virginia Penitentiary. Or some people like to call it the Moundsville Penitentiary. The West Virginia Penitentiary is located in Moundsville, West Virginia. Is now a withdrawn and retired Gothic-style prison that operated from 1966 to, get this, guys, 1995.
Wow. You mean 1866? You said 1966.
1866 to 1995. The site is now being maintained as a tourist attraction, museum, training facility, and filming location. Actually, I don't know if they still do it, up to the last 5 years, that's where they were holding prison riot training.
I think they still do. They do that on like a national level too. That's not just like a state level. Like they do that for like national mock riot trainings and stuff.
Yeah,
and to give people a perspective of how long that was open. Whenever it was built, As in, they literally brought the prisoners in on horse and buggy and in carriages, just to give that a historical, like, that's how inmates were brought in whenever it first opened.
Absolutely.
To when the time it closed, 1995, I mean, that's kind of insane to think about how much changed.
Went from horses to Hondas.
Right. So we're going to probably throw some pictures in of what that actual gate looks like. Our video guy here is like, why did you say that?
I was thinking that.
So we're going to talk about the design. The penitentiary design is similar to the facility at the 1859 State Prison in Illinois, Joliet, Illinois to be exact, which is a Gothic stone structure complete with turrets, battlements, except it is scaled down to half the size. So when you see this prison, it's meant to intimidate you. It's meant to scare you. So it was a Gothic style. The original architecture designs have been lost in translation, which means, they lost all the original things. The dimensions of the West Virginia State Penitentiary is it's 82.5 foot in length, 352.5 foot wide, and the stone walls are 5 feet thick at the base, and then they go all the way up to 2.5 foot. It is a sandstone structure in most places. It was built with prison labor. So just think about that for a minute. They brought in these inmates and said, build this prison, and then after they built it, they're like, all right, get in there.
You're home now.
Yeah, you're home now. So what happened was the reason why this came about is the founding is in 1863, West Virginia seceded from Virginia in the American Civil War. We just said, us West Virginia said, nope, we're out. The best went west. And that's what we like to say. As West Virginia left. And what that actually caused for West Virginia is a shortage of any type of various public institutions and mainly prisons. What are you going to do now with your inmates? Because they can't go to Virginia prisons anymore. They got to stay in West Virginia. So at that time, Governor Arthur Borman lobbied the West Virginia legislature for a state penitentiary, but he was repeatedly denied. As anybody that works in government knows, that's usually how that goes. At first, they directed them to send prisoners to other institutions out of state, and then they directed them to use existing jails, and both options turned out to be inadequate. As you know, when it comes to county jails and city jails, they're not big.
They're not very secure either.
Yeah, they're not secure, they're not big, and they're just not well equipped. And then if you send your prisoners out of state, there's cost that comes into that. So the original part of this prison was they built a wooden prison at first to house the inmates going there because they didn't have it yet. But what makes this prison interesting is it's in Moundsville. What else is in Moundsville? Why do they call it Moundsville?
The Indian burial mound.
They have Indian burial mounds across the road from where the institution sits, right? So at that time, they were like, well, that's where they're burying Native Americans was in the mound. We'll just build it across the road. So when they start, which I'm sure they wasn't bulldozing, they was digging and everything, they found hundreds and hundreds of bones of Native Americans, and it disrupted their graves.
That's how you get cursed.
Yeah, that's how well, not only that, it's on the banks of the Ohio River. And, I don't know a whole lot about paranormal stuff, but what I do know is normally where there's water, there's lots of activity. So not only have you interrupted Native American burial grounds, now it's beside a river. And Lord knows that they probably didn't respect the Native American bones or remains or whatever you want to call it.
Especially because you're dealing with, inmates that are being forced to build their own house, basically.
Well, in that time, you was still, it's very much
wild.
I don't want to say Wild West, but yeah, very much that style. There was a lot of hatred towards, Native Americans, so they probably just dumped the bones in the river and said, go on about it, So, like I said, a temporary built a wooden prison nearby that summer. This gave prison officials time to assess what prison design should be used, and that's when they chose the Northern Illinois Penitentiary at Joliet, Illinois. It's a Gothic revival architecture. And like I said, we'll share a picture. It's very beautiful. The first building was constructed on the site was the North Wagon Gate, which is what you were saying earlier. Was what would you call it? The carriage gate.
Yeah,
that's what it was. So conditions at the prisons during the turn of the 20th century were actually good. This is according to Warden's report.
Yeah.
I'll pause there for a minute because everybody knows those. But which stated that both the quantity, and the quality of all the purchases of material, food, clothing have been very gradual but steadily improved, while the discipline has become more nearly perfect and the extraction of labor less stringent. However, this prison was one of the top 10 most violent prisons in the United States due to the amount of rape, murder, assault, and gambling going on in that prison at that time.
Now, just to touch on some of the historical things, wasn't it supposed to be designed to be self-sufficient?
All prisons are supposed to be.
They were. I know that doesn't usually always end up being the case, but
That's
like it was
the plan.
supposed to be like they're supposed to be able to grow their own food, you know, have plants there to try to get its own power and stuff.
So, there was an actual room. There's a recreation room called the Sugar Shack, is what the inmates named it, strictly because of the fighting and raping that went on in that rec room. So, in 1929, the state decided to double the size of the penitentiary due to the problem of overcrowding. So to give you an actual kind of, I'm looking down because I got this written down because I have a bad memory. But the cells were 5 by 7, and at that time they were meant for one person. Did they hold one person? No. You had 3 people in a 5 by 7 cell.
Jeez.
And that was the way it was until they built an expansion. 2 prisoners were sleeping in the bunks, with the third sleeping on a mattress on the floor. Think about that. A bunk in a 5 by 7 cell. 2 bunks. And somebody sleeping in the floor. There's not enough room. Not enough room. The state used prison labor again to complete the phase of the construction in 1959, which had been delayed by a steel shortage during World War II. So that's why it took so long.
Interesting tidbit I saw back on that page there. It said it was completed and the total cost of the building was $363,061. Can you imagine what that would equate to now?
Oh, man. Well, you got to think most prisons today are multi-million-dollar institutions. So, yeah. And this was beautiful architecture. Now, if you look at newer prisons that are built, very bland, very plain.
Yeah. What year was that completed? Let's do an inflation calculator.
Well, this thing, the cost of that one would have been $1876.
Oh God!
Is when that was completed. That first phase, which cost $363,061. So let's see what the inflation calculator will say on that. While we're waiting. Hold on a minute. We got new buttons now.
It would be $10,708,772.61.
That is insane.
$10 million. Could you imagine what a $10 million prison would look like today, though? That's probably like more Supermax than the Supermaxes.
Well, I mean, at one point you got a 5-foot wall in thickness, and it's stone. It's hand cut stone. With sandstone again.
If they rebuilt it today, it would cost well over that for all the hand cut stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's why everything now is like aluminum, poured concrete, steel.
Cheap materials.
Cheap materials, yeah. Fun fact that in 1983, convicted multiple murderer Charles Manson actually requested to come to this prison. However, the warden at that time says, you know what? This prison is already a crap show. We don't need any more crazies here. We don't need you here.
We don't need the king of the crazies.
Right, exactly. But with Charles Manson, his mother actually served time at the West Virginia Penitentiary. Because it did hold...
I knew that they were like from West Virginia.
They were.
Or had ties to West Virginia. I just didn't know what they were.
Yeah, but his mother actually did time there. Because they did hold some female inmates at the main building.
And during that time, didn't he live with his aunt and uncle who were West Virginians?
I don't know that part.
I think so. Don't fact check me.
Don't fact check me. So with that, moving forward, as you had 1979, you had a prison break. So basically, 15 prisoners escaped from the prison. One of the escapees was Ronald Turney Williams, serving time for murdering Sergeant David Lilly of the Beckley Police Department. It's crazy because it's down the road from us. On May 12, 1975, he managed to steal a prison guard, and I hate that term, it's correction officer, service weapon in the escape, and upon reaching the streets of Moundsville, encountered an off-duty police West Virginia State Trooper, Philip Kinsner, who was driving past the prison with his wife. The trooper tried to, stop it, which he ended up getting fatally shot. Williams remained at large for 18 months, sending taunting notes to authorities and making the FBI's 10 most wanted list.
Dang.
So he went on the run for 18 months, and not only that, was harassing and taunting the news and police forces.
They said that the biggest reason why it went on for so long was because Moundsville didn't, they wanted to be contained themselves.
Yeah.
They didn't want the public to know, they didn't want the public to get worried, and get their reputation hurt because they had a prison break. So they were trying to contain it themselves and didn't even notify the Moundsville police or the state police department until the off-duty officer was shot and killed.
Well, I got some quotes actually here in just a second from the Marshall County sheriff at that time, Sheriff Leitner. But with Williams, like I said, he remained at large. He actually murdered a guy in Arizona during a robbery, was connected to crimes in Colorado and Pennsylvania, and he was finally caught after a shootout with federal agents in the George Washington Hotel in New York City. He was apprehended and returned to West Virginia to complete several life sentences. Arizona wants him for extradition for his execution. But as of October 26, 2024, which is the last time this was updated, he remains in West Virginia custody.
He ain't never getting out of here.
No. Well, when he does get out, Arizona wants to. I don't know if Arizona still does have the death penalty. I don't know.
I think they are. I think they
they
are
do.
still one of
Well, they want to execute him. So.
He's probably
Then why,
fine over here.
at that point, if the state, because if they extradite, then Arizona would have to pay for it anyways. I just would think that why wouldn't you take them up on that offer?
Yeah, save you money.
That's the way I see it, but
If that's the, that kind of sounds.
but then again, I guess that being said, their attorneys could probably fight it, saying, "Nope, he's serving a life sentence here.
Yep.
He has to complete his sentence."
But a life sentence has a cap number of years, right?
No.
It's just till you die.
Yeah.
I thought it was technically so many years.
No.
7,900.
Really? That's the technical years.
It's not technical, but.
Anyway.
We'll move on. So at that time, Marshall County Sheriff Robert Leitner was very critical about the poor police communications during that prison break. The sheriff's office and local police did not learn about the escape from the state police. Instead, they heard it over the police scanner. It was a good 20 minutes before we knew about the escape. If somebody had notified us, there's a good chance that the sheriff's department and the Moundsville police could have been on the scene while all the prisoners were still on the block. He was also critical of the four-state manhunt that followed when convicted murderers David Morgan and Ronald Williams, along with convicted rapist Harold Gowers Jr., remained at large. Communications have been very poor. I think they should keep the local law enforcement officers more informed. I have no idea what they're doing or what they found. And you know what? I agree with that. The communication is key in any type of thing.
Because whenever it comes to that, that's public safety.
Yeah.
You got to work as a team whenever it comes to the public safety, and they see what happens whenever you don't.
Right. So in 1986, January 1st is New Year's Day. So you had a lot of people that probably stayed out, a lot of officers, a lot of staff, probably stayed out all night, watching the clock turn and ball drop, and was out partying, and had a lot of call-offs, imaginably so. So in 1986, there was a riot there. And it was the day of the most infamous riot in the history of the penitentiary. The West Virginia Penitentiary was undergoing many changes and problems, and security had become extremely thin in all areas. Since it was a cons prison, which means people with longer sentences and usually been in prison for a long time, most of the locks in the cells had been picked, and inmates roamed the halls freely. Bad plumbing and insects caused rapid spreading of various diseases, with the prison holding more than 2,000 men crowding was an issue. Another major contribution to the riot was riot's cause was the fact that it was a holiday. So many officers had called off work, and the prisoners planned to conduct their uprising on the Pacific Day. With that being said, obviously they're going to know when the best time to do something like that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because they're there all day, they watch, they learn, right? So at 5:30 p.m., 20 inmates, known as the group called the Avengers, stormed the mess hall where Captain Glasslock and others were on duty. Within seconds, he, the captain, 5 other officers, and this food service worker were tackled and slammed to the floor. Inmates put knives to their throats and handcuffed them to their own with their own handcuffs. Although several hostages were taken throughout the day, none of them were seriously injured. However, over the course of the 2-day upheaval, 3 inmates were seriously injured. However, over the course of the 2-day upheaval, 3 inmates were killed for an assortment of reasons. The inmates who initially initiated the riot were not killed. Were not prepared to take charge of it. So the guys that actually planned it, they really didn't think through. They didn't think it was going to get that far. So when they finally did it, they wasn't like. It
got out of control.
Prepared. Yeah, it got out of control too fast for them. So Danny Lehman, the Avengers president, was quickly agreed, prepared to take charge of it. And he was, the best suited to the task of negotiating with authorities and presenting the demands to the media. Yet Lehman was not part of the 20 men who began the riot. He just kind of joined in. So the governor Moore went to the penitentiary to talk to the inmates, which is insane, right? Your governor is the one talking to the inmates. And this meeting was set up with a new list of rules and standards which prison would be built. National and local news covered the story, as well as the inmates meeting with Governor Moore. So that's insane.
And that actually led to them building Mount Olive, which is what ended up succeeding Moundsville and then Huttonsville and stuff like that. And something that, I didn't read on there, but I've heard from people that I've met through previous jobs. There were inmates who were a part of that riot that are still serving time at different facilities within the state and are on permanent solitary, more or less. They're never allowed to leave their cell because of what happened. And that's still to this day.
So let's talk about some of the darker sides of it. Obviously, you did have the death penalty in West Virginia at one time. So from 1899 to 1959, 94 men were executed at the prison. And hanging was the main method of execution until 1949. And were public viewings, you could view this hanging until 1931, with 85 men meeting that fate of being publicly watched, being hung. On June 19th, 1931, Frank Heyer was executed for murdering his wife. When the trapdoor beneath him was opened and with his full weight settled into the noose, he was instantly decapitated.
Must have been a heavy guy.
Yeah. Or a really strong rope.
So does it say if the gallows still stand, or is it just a
They
location of where they were?
The gallows are still standing. But it's as far as it's like a tourist thing now.
Right.
It's on the yard now.
Gotcha.
That's actually where they done the execution.
Right.
Yeah. But it's still standing, yeah. The gallows are there. Yeah. Following this event, attendance at hangings was by invitation only. And the last man executed by hanging was Bud Peterson from Logan County. He was buried at the prison cemetery because his family refused to claim his body.
Wow. He must have done something real bad.
Yep. Beginning in 1951, electrocution became the means of execution. The electric chair used by the prison, nicknamed Old Sparky, which, that's kind of the theme every time you hear the electric chair. It's kind of its nickname everywhere you look.
Yeah.
It was originally built by an inmate there, Paul Glenn, and the last execution carried out in the state's electric chair was that of Elmer Bruner on April 3rd, 1959. 9 men were electrocuted before the state prohibited capital punishment entirely in 1965. The original chair is on display in the facility and is included in the official tour.
Wow. That would be pretty cool to see. I know that might sound a little morbid, but I really like stuff like that.
I've sat in an electric chair before.
That's crazy.
Down in Tennessee. Alcatraz.
Oh, I've sat in that. Hey, they got OJ's Bronco down there right now?
Yeah, I've seen it too.
Oh, did you? I haven't been in there since they got it. They got, don't they have the car Tupac was shot in too?
They didn't have it.
Didn't they have? I think they had Bonnie and Clyde,
They do.
didn't they?
I've
Yeah.
seen it.
I think they might have the Clark Tupac was shot in now.
Dang. Well, they also they had the blood stain on the wooden floor planks. So was it Jesse James
Maybe.
of his blood?
Yeah.
Actual
Yeah, it was
wooden
Jesse
planks.
James. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to have a picture of it on my phone. If I can find that picture on my phone, I'll send it to Drew and let him put it on the video. And I'll put the picture of the of me sitting in
won't
the.
put the picture there.
I'll send it to Drew and he'll put it on there of the old Sparky electric chair. So let's go over some facts. The other facts that we want to go over: the hauntings. Because obviously the West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville, West Virginia, has reported many hauntings. These include the shadow figures, which we hear that a lot, right?
Yeah.
Some say
Often associated with a demonic presence, by the way.
Exactly.
Shadow figures.
some say they've seen a shadow man or a transparent misty form. Strange noises. Some report hearing disembodied voices, screams, or unexplained sounds. Cold spots. Apparitions and electronic voice phenomenon, which is EVP.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
That's one of those devices that they use, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some of the hotbed areas there is, I would imagine all of it, but is the Sugar Shack, which is the old rec room in the basement, which was once known for illegal activities.
Listen, I ain't going to no basement or nowhere that's supposed to be haunted.
Especially when it's nicknamed the Sugar Shack,
Yeah, nah.
you know.
Mm-mm.
The North Hall is where some of the prison's worst offenders were placed. Solitary confinement. Some say that area is extremely haunted. The shower cages. I imagine there was some abuse going on there. The psych ward, the chapel, the dining room. The prison has a history of death and carnage. It was one of the United States Department of Justice top 10 most violent correctional facilities list. The prison is now used for tourism and as a museum. So you can actually go and take tours of this, including a haunted house tour. So with that being said, one main story I heard about haunting is there was an inmate there that was quite favored by some of the staff because of his knowledge. He could fix anything. He could make anything run. So they kind of gave him favors instead of making him stay in a cell that was overran. Kind of gave him his own little bunk area, which was still, from what I heard, very horrendous. But they let him stay in that area, and a lot of the inmates got jealous of that. So what happened was you had a bunch of them that decided to get locked up and go to segregation, or the hole, as they called it, and which was right down from where this inmate stayed.
Mm-hmm.
So they waited for him to go use the bathroom, and he was on the toilet, and they ambushed him with not sharpened shanks, with dull shanks.
Oh, that's terrible.
And they said when they found this inmate, he was sitting on the toilet with his head almost cut off.
Dang. That's terrible.
And they said that when you go into his area, if you're a female, he'll communicate with you, and he's nice to you. But if you're a male, that's when he's really aggressive. He likes to mess with electronics if you have anything, and he's really aggressive towards male people that go in there. But towards female, he talks and communicates and stuff. And I can imagine if you was brutally murdered by a bunch of men, I would probably be feel some type of way,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably be salty too.
I mean, also, like we hinted on in one of our previous episodes, Edward Shue died in that
Yeah.
prison. The Greenbrier ghost story, that was the husband. He died in this prison of an unknown epidemic outbreak of whatever. He's also in an unmarked grave. So I've read that they think that his spirit is there, but I mean, I can't really find much about it.
Yeah.
I would imagine he probably died around the time when they were starting to get all the insects and the diseases and everything, and the overcrowding and everything that was happening with the prison. I imagine it was about that time.
1900, I think, is when they said.
Yeah, it was like 19.
So I mean, that prison was still fairly new at that point.
Yeah.
It's 40 years old at that point, yeah. But
Oh, was it?
yeah,
it
it was in
1866.
1866.
I was thinking you said it was like opened in like 1886 after the construction and everything.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like there's just a ton of things we could go over about the prison.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
I mean, if we wanted to dive into the history and the behind this and that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like we could drag it out for
Oh, of course.
forever. You know what I mean?
The main thing is you know, you're looking at the paranormal side of it, and then somebody builds a prison right on top of Native American burial grounds. You're just literally asking.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
asking for trouble right there.
Oh yeah, there's just so much bad energy there.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, it's said that anytime that you are like building or doing anything, if you find that it's a Native American burial ground, you should just
Yeah, they said
Quit.
you should actually contact like Native Americans because there's like proper ways that they've learned over the years of how to handle stuff like that.
yeah.
Like let them do their ceremonies, let them do it their way.
Yeah. Well, that's like with Lake Shawnee. That's part of it.
Yeah.
It's
Indian
background.
burial ground.
Yeah.
Well, that you got this area of Appalachia that we live in, where you hear that story all the time. Well, the reason why that place is this because Native Americans buried around there. You know, that's what you hear a lot around this area.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but it is you can't really dispute the Moundsville considering there's literally a giant mound across the road from the penitentiary.
which is also another historical landmarker
Mhm.
is the Native American burial mound.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I don't even know why they would choose that location to start with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, realistically, you look at it, they could have almost been doing it potentially just out of pettiness if we're just being transparent.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
It was 1860s.
yeah, I mean,
70s.
that's definitely not something that we could just overlook. There's a very good possibility of that.
Yeah. So I mean, I think we about covered the prison. What do you think?
Yeah, we really hit a lot of the historical parts of it. As far as like the hauntings go, I mean, there is a lot of hauntings that go on in it, but it's very similar to the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum as far as how the hauntings go. You know, everybody. One thing I have read is that anytime you go to Moundsville, you're always going to get activity.
Yeah.
I've never read a report where somebody said nothing happened.
Yeah.
There's doors always slamming. There's weird noises. There's something moving. You know.
I feel like it's one of those things though, just like the Trans-Allegheny, is that there was so much abuse, so much violence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and on top of this particular location being right at a Native American burial ground, that's just a melting pot of haunting. You know, that's like the epitome of somewhere being haunted is you have all these things, all these deaths in one place.
Yeah.
You know,
And then you got, how many cemeteries do they have? Like in Moundsville, don't they have like 2 or 3
I think
cemeteries?
I'm not really sure there. I know at Trans-Allegheny it was 3.
hmm
I think that they've got about at least 2, I think, for Moundsville. So, you know, you got these people, you know, that not only died at the prison, but are also buried there as well.
Right. Right. And you know, it's more when you look at the Trans-Allegheny, you start looking at the staff treatment. That was a lot of what was the issue was. You had the lobotomies, you had everything like the staff treatment. But when you dig into Moundsville, and I'm not saying that staff didn't do their fair share, but it's more of that was just the culture there as far as like the inmates go. You had, like it said at the beginning of it when I was reading, it was a con prison, which means, I mean, it was hardened criminals that lived there. And I'm not saying anything bad about that, but, you know, usually, you know, if you have any dealings or any experience in that field, you know that you got people that done a long prison time, they like things a certain way, and if it's not done that way, then they fix it immediately. And that usually leads to violence.
hmm
And that's probably a lot of where the hauntings come from. I mean, for example, they had a room called the Sugar Shack, which was known for illegal activities. Do you think they had an officer down there in the basement in that room? Probably not back in that time.
No.
Probably not. Probably not.
And even if they did, it was probably just one of those things, hey, take this, you need to go do some rounds.
All right. So we hit the West Virginia State Penitentiary, Moundsville Penitentiary up in Moundsville, West Virginia. We are going to be planning on going to Trans-Allegheny. I've looked at it. We don't have a date set on it. We may have some special guests join us there. If you've been watching the other podcasts or the other videos, we may have a special guest come and join us there. It'll be fun. We may have another special haunted attraction we may be going to. Just watch the other podcasts and you'll see that, or listen to them. You'll see that. Our next episode, we're going to keep going into our West Virginia and Appalachian folklore. It's a story that it's very intriguing, and I want to gain some more information about it before I give it its full justice. And we're going to talk about the Flatwoods Monster, okay? So our next episode, we're going to talk about the Flatwoods Monster. It is in Fallout 76, so if you want a sneak peek, join that game. Go look at it, and it's in this actual story comes out of Braxton County, West Virginia. So this is a true West Virginian folklore.
Yeah.
So, how you guys feel about it?
Flatwoods is also the geographical center of our state.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a sign when you're going up toward Morgantown. You get to Flatwoods that says Geographical Center of West Virginia.
Oh, wow.
That's really weird because, granted, West Virginia's designed kind of weird.
It is a weird looking state.
So, just to think of it being with the placement of where it's at, to think that that's the geographical center.
Right. Right. So, with that being said, I appreciate you guys listening. I hope you enjoyed the content this week. I gotta go home, man. I suffered through 1.5 gummies, a handful of Bean Boozled and Bean Boozled jelly beans, a couple bites of the world's hottest beef jerky. The gummy bears is the world's hottest gummy bears. It was tough. I drank 3/4 of a gallon of milk. I gotta go home now. So I appreciate y'all watching. Y'all have a great day. Remember, as always, this is the basement where it's top level content from the lower level of the house. Thank you guys.
Y'all take care.